a letter warning of the damage caused by the failure to readmit former leader Jeremy Corbyn to the party. A teenager has been remanded in custody after appearing in court charged with the murder of a 12-year-old girl in Liverpool. Ava White was stabbed in the city centre last Thursday and died from what police described as catastrophic injuries. The 14-year-old boy, who can't be named for legal reasons, was also charged with being in possession of a blade. The jury has been chosen in the sex trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell in New York. The British socialite has been accused of recruiting teenagers for Jeffrey Epstein to sexually abuse for 10 years from 1994. She's been in a US jail since her arrest in July last year and denies any wrongdoing. Ghislaine's brother, Ian, also told GB News that Epstein was able to bend people to his will.
He lived a completely compartmentalized life and appears to have been a master manipulator of some very, very serious people, well-known businessmen, politicians, and I believe my sister included.
Over 100,000 homes are still without power after Storm Arwen battered the UK. The Energy Networks Association said about 155,000 properties were still suffering from power cuts this afternoon. They said the destruction of electricity lines was the worst seen in Britain since 2005. And Manchester United has appointed Ralph Rangnick as their new interim manager. He takes the reins until the end of the season with a 2-year consultancy deal to follow. First-team coach Michael Carrick has been caretaker in charge for 2 matches since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked just over a week ago. Well, that's just about it from me for now. Let's go back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Simon. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight, my panel. We've got the educational specialist and podcaster Tom Buick, journalist and campaigner Julie Bindel, and political commentator and former MEP Michael Heaver. Good evening to all of you. We've got 2 newbies on the panel today. And of course, the old faithful Tom. Welcome back. And you know the drill by now, don't you? It's not just about us and our thoughts. I like to hear from you. All your thoughts on the topics, you can email through to me on gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me as well at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Also, I mean, you know the drill by now. We're everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. You can watch on YouTube as well. Some of you might be doing that now, and if you are, hello to you. We're everywhere at GB News, that is for sure. Let's move on, though, to our first topic. If you'd have asked me a week ago what Omicron was, I would have said a transformer, a kid's toy. Alas, as we've all discovered, not at all. It is, in fact, the latest COVID variant. I've got to be honest, we've been here before, haven't we? Several times, in fact. But after 11 cases of Omicron were discovered in the UK, the government in England has decided to tighten its grip and make it compulsory to wear masks on transport, in shops and at secondary schools. However, Scotland and Wales say the new rules do not go far enough and is calling for an 8-day quarantine for all travellers arriving back in the UK.
The number of mutations that it has and the nature of these, and some of the very early indications from southern Africa, have raised the concern that this variant might be more transmissible than Delta, which of course is currently the dominant variant in Scotland and many other countries. There is no doubt that this presents potentially the most challenging development in the course of the pandemic for quite some time.
Now, I wonder, what do you feel at the moment? What do you think to all of this? I'll be honest, I try and be an upbeat person, but I actually, especially this weekend, just felt quite down, if I'm going to be honest, a sense of despair. Right now, I actually felt, I mean, probably foolishly perhaps, but I felt like we were almost moving on with life and starting to get back to normal. But no, here we are, we've been yanked back down the well of COVID, haven't we? And I wonder, I'll start with you, Tom, what do you make to this? What do you think to the government's reaction to it? Some people are being critical of it. Some people are saying it goes too far, not far enough. And the reality is there's still so many unknowns when it comes to this variant, isn't there? What's your thoughts on it all?
Well, it's completely human, Michelle, to feel down about it. I think there are people watching this and people up and down the land who are looking forward to Christmas this year, spending time with family and loved ones, when this time last year, of course, it was illegal to have family members in your home. So, of course, you know, people will be down about it, they will be concerned about it. But on the key point about is the government's response proportionate? I don't believe it is. I mean, we were told back in July and more recently when government announced its Plan A and its Plan B that it would move to Plan B on the basis of the scientific evidence. You just heard there from the First Minister in Scotland using words like might and potentially. She was just describing what is obviously a variant has genetically changed. Well, guess what? Viruses do mutate and they do change. Where is the evidence coming out of South Africa that this variant, Omicron, sounds like a really bad 1970s B movie from the scientific world, but apart from that, where is the evidence that it's increasing hospitalisations and deaths? Where is the evidence that, for example, it is evading the vaccines? I think if our politicians and leaders had that kind of evidence, there perhaps would be more tolerance as to what the government's actually trying to now put in place.
Yeah, Julie, one of the things that I find bizarre about this, actually, because, we saw it at the weekend, if you were watching any of the political programmes at the weekend, there was a bit of a sentiment that actually the UK might be perhaps panicking about some of this. If you look at places like Botswana, some of the early cases that were found, they were found amongst the vaccinated people. So I have to say, I do find elements of the government's reaction slightly peculiar, because you will have seen today, JCVI conference, and basically, I'm summarising here because it was quite long, but in essence, it was faster and more on the boosters. Your views?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that a few people have reported deciding to get the booster that they hadn't actually bothered to do, despite the fact that they were well in time for it, and found themselves 1,920 in a queue, as one person tweeted earlier. So clearly the message has got through that vaccines and boosters are crucial. But we should have learned a lesson that the world, poorer
How can they be that crucial, though, Julie, if the people that have got these cases, certainly in places like Botswana, are vaccinated? So how can they be that crucial then?
Well, a friend of mine was vaccinated, but her previous vaccination was 6 months old, and she got COVID just before her booster was due, and she got quite ill with it. She wasn't in hospital, she didn't die, but this is the whole point. We need to get boosters, and we should have vaccinated. We should have made sure that vaccines were available to the poorer and developing countries. It's a lesson to behold. We can't just vaccinate richer countries in the global north.
So you're all for the government reaction, and do you think they should be going further, or?
Well, I think that they should have been consistent. And why on earth compulsory mask wearing on the underground, for example, in London, and in shops, and when you're in close proximity? Why on earth was that not continually compulsive until we had the data that showed whether or not transmissions were going down to a point that we didn't have to worry about retransmission? It's so easy to wear a mask. It's so easy to think about protecting somebody else when you're in close proximity. So now they're reintroducing masks.
But, well, you say that they're reintroducing masks, and yes, they are on transport, in shops, etc. And in secondary schools, I have a problem with this whole thing with kids. But let me just show you a couple of graphics. I think this was last night, for example, at one of the teaching awards. I think I've got some pictures. You've got Nadeem Zawali, for example, was at this event hosting. This is just one picture. I've got another one in a second. And also, look, this is another one from the same event. So these are the teachers, by the way, the teaching associations, of course, that are in my mind. But these are the same kind of environments where you want your kids. And also, look at this. So if you're wondering what Boris Johnson was doing this lunchtime, I've got a little graphic to show you. There he is, Julie Hartley, a brewer, a broadcaster. She was at a lunch with Boris Johnson. I mean, it's quite hard to see that, but let me tell you, if you can't see it, it's a packed room. Boris Johnson is there by Arad, not wearing a mask. And Michael Heaver, I tell you, one of the problems that I've got is hypocrisy. I cannot stand people telling me that I've got to wear masks, that I've got to do this and that and the other. When I see stuff like that, and especially, Michael, when I think of kids, secondary school kids being told now, asked, suggested, cajoled, whatever word you want, to wear masks. When I see their teachers, etc., Nadeem Zawali, Boris Johnson, the like, not wearing them.
Yeah, well, look, one thing we don't want is hysteria and panic, and I actually think GBNews has got a key role in bringing a counterbalance to some of the stuff that we do see in mainstream media. It's interesting, Michelle, I mean, I was actually at the footy last night. I'm a Chelsea season ticket holder. I was at Stamford Bridge, 40,000 odd people there. And something else that struck me recently, I mean, I've been doing that for a little while. To get into the stadium, actually, at Chelsea, you have to either have proof of vaccine, which I have, or you have to have proof of negative test. So that's already been going on. And something that really struck me the other day, a chap helped me out with something, and I shook his hand. And after I shook his hand, he sort of looked at his hand aghast and said, you know what, I've not shook a hand for years now. And it just, and I think one of the things I think we have to consider with this, people psychologically are in very different states, and situations and outlooks at the moment. I've been going to the footy around huge amounts of people on the tube for a little while now. Other people, still feel very uncomfortable. And I think, the media coverage, the government's language, this stuff really matters. And I hope we get it right and we don't have hysterical.
But the key thing there is psychologically, and I think that's what, for critics of the government and for these mask mandates, say that this is all about signalling to the population that we're in a new phase of the crisis, the variant of concern. It's actually more about trying to, for example, ensure the booster programme rolls out more effectively. Now, that, to me, doesn't seem to be a legitimate thing for a government to do. If they want more people vaccinated with the booster, then make the case for vaccinations. But to get to the point, and Michelle, you touched on this, that we've got, yet again, primary school pupils, secondary school pupils, walking around, wearing masks in that performative way, signalling, frankly, fear to their fellow pupils, but it's OK once they're back in the classroom to take the mask off. Where's the epidemiological case for how that is in any way helping, for example, cut down the transmissibility of COVID? So as far as I'm concerned, we've got a political class that's actually lost the plot at this particular point now in managing the pandemic, where it is all performative. It's not actually about really tackling the epidemiological challenge we've got.
Yeah, let me tell you another concern that I've got. So I watched these conferences, the JCVI conferences, I watched the press conferences that we have, and I listened to the journalists' questions that are there, and the questions come out basically, are we going fast enough? Do we have to worry about Christmas? And all this kind of stuff. And I sit there and I think, hang on a second, why is no one asking the questions that I've got? So an example here. You might have heard on the JCVI, the conference today, that now the 12 to 15-year-olds are going to have their second jabs. Well, I've got in front of me the statements from the JCVI, one in August and one in September. Now, I'll spare the details of the August one, but in September, for example, the key points that they raise, I'm not like Boris Johnson, I staple my notes, by the way, so I won't be losing my points. But they say that when it comes to vaccinating children, so 12 to 15-year-olds, it's all about, the focus is always about the risk that this places onto the child. It was never supposed to be about, the transfer of ailments or whatever risk to other people. It was about making decisions based on what is the risk of this ailment to the child. And we'll all agree that for children, if you're a healthy child anyway, it's very, very small. It talks here about given the low risk. It goes on, and I've got the most recent one, which was, or one of the most recent ones, which was the 3rd of September. Now, when it was talking about vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds, it talks about things like myocarditis. And it says, and I quote directly from the JCVI statement here, substantial uncertainty remains regarding the health risk associated with these adverse reactions. When it goes on about the data and the known harms, etc., it says such data might not be available for several months. Well, that was in September, and here we are now talking about rolling out a second booster to these children, 12 to 15. And before I bring the panel in on this, I just want to show you, like an advert, I guess you'd call it, in Quebec, of all places, and people will go, well, we don't live in Quebec, Michelle, so what are you talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is what I call a kind of continual slippage of some of these rollouts, and Quebec, for example, they're talking about 5-year-olds. Look at this. I'm sorry, I've got goosebumps, right? And I do accept it's because the aircon is very, very high and I'm cold in here. But nonetheless, Julie, this gives me goosebumps because today in this country we're talking about, bearing in mind JCVI originally said that mass rollouts of this vaccine to 12 to 15-year-olds on health grounds alone, they didn't recommend to healthy children. They moderated, or the government, should I say, moderated things because the CMO said the risk of education, the disruption to education meant they did that. Now here we are, fast forwarding, they're having a second one. What do you think to that?
Adverts like that, wholly irresponsible and actually counterproductive because you just scare people and they switch off. Have we learned nothing from the series of government ads in the late 1980s 80s and early 1990s about the AIDS pandemic. And did we not learn that people switch off? They look at this kind of government health warning in a way that's hostile to self-protection and the protection of others. Clearly, children are passing on the virus to, in some cases, elderly and otherwise vulnerable people, and that needs to be addressed. But to actually look at vaccinating children as though this is an answer to the growing numbers of cases or to this new variant is just outrageous and so badly placed.
Yeah. See, Michael, because I've got to be honest, right, I'm quite harsh in my view about things like this. I really question why are we talking about giving these kids second jabs if it's written in black and white that actually it wasn't the first rollout to mass health for children, wasn't recommended purely on health grounds alone. But there is a part of me, I don't know what to believe anymore, Michael. Like everyone, I want to be healthy and safe for as long as possible for my own child, but I'm finding myself at a loss knowing what to do and what to believe.
Well, I think it's sort of over-the-top ads and rhetoric that we have seen at times that shows you now, and certainly in this country, when you look at the polling on this, that majority of Brits are actually in favour, in a lot of these polls, of further restrictions in terms of face masks, in terms of lockdowns and things like that. And that has been the case for a while now. Particularly, one of the things I find really disturbing that we've seen recently is this term, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And it does get to a point, I mean, I've seen some of the policing in Australia, for instance, seems to be totally and utterly over the top and ridiculous, where it almost sort of creeps into being some sort of sci-fi horror, you know, with the song and dance. And like you say, I mean, that doesn't, confronting it that way, I don't think speaks to people. I think it just comes across as I say, way over the top, completely the wrong tone. And I hope, as I said, that GB News and certainly the government in this country move not to simply push people towards panic and hysteria, but look at what is going on and take sensible, decisive action.
Are you not angry, though, about anti-vaxxers and those that choose not to be vaccinated because they seem to think that it's some kind of infringement of their civil liberties?
What do you call an anti-vaxxer? Let's clarify what you mean by that before you go into your point.
Someone who refuses to accept that they have any kind of responsibility for their own health or the health of others to get the vaccine, and then even further than that, that this is some kind of world conspiracy to keep tabs on us, and it actually doesn't reduce fatalities or severe illness with...
Well, you're blurring the line there, aren't you? I know a lot of my viewers, for example, not all. I mean, we have split viewers here, and a lot of people absolutely think everyone should get vaccinated. But there are some people, and I know this because they contact me daily, that are not... They resent, actually, I would say, this label anti-vaxxer. They've done research. They've decided on balance. Maybe they've got prior immunity. Maybe they're recovering from COVID. Maybe they're anxious about some of the side effects. They're hesitant, they're going to wait it out and see. And I think that actually calling those people, labelling those people anti-vaxxers and then lumbering them all in and talking about conspiracy theories, I don't think that's helpful.
No, I accept that, actually, that was a false connection. And there are two distinct types of people that are very against the vaccine. Some are vaccine deniers, some are anti the establishment,
they're
pushing them
elements,
to having the vaccine. And it just, you know, this is about a kind of collective responsibility when there's a virus that is sweeping around the population.
Threatening to exclude people from society is necessarily the best way to bring them along.
I agree.
Yeah. And, you know, informed consent, bodily autonomy, whatever you want to call it, I think is an important principle about living in a free, democratic society.
Of course.
I mean, actually, linking back to some of the earlier comments, what's really important, I think, about this whole debate is we need to get back to it being presented and messaged as a public health challenge. That's what it is. And it's becoming overly politicised. We've even now got people, you know, it seems over there in Canada, wanting to win some kind of Oscar award for the Stephen King best soundtrack of a horror movie. I mean, I was absolutely horrified seeing that as the father of 3 children. It's awful. So, you know, I think we've got to get back to what this whole crisis has been about, which is it is a public health challenge. Therefore, it needs to be dealt with as a public health challenge. And that means, frankly, our political leaders and the scientists who support them, including the government's own scientific advisors, who made the case to the government that 12 to 15-year-olds on health grounds alone don't need to be vaccinated, which then comes back to your earlier point about, Julie, which was, why aren't we giving more of the spare vaccines then to the developing world, where we could then deal with, for example, variants of
Jane has been in touch on Twitter. I think it's suffice to say she's not very happy with me. You've tweeted me a few times already. The essence of what Jane is saying is that I'm wrong to point out things like Boris Johnson having lunch without a mask and the Teachers' Awards night without mask, because Jane says mask wearing doesn't even start until Tuesday, Michelle. Oh, well, that's all right then, Jane. Silly me. This new variant of COVID is very clever. It realises that today is Monday and tomorrow is Tuesday in the mask. So you're quite right. Forgive me, is what I would say to that. Going to take a quick break there. When we come back, I'll be asking about France. Do you recall there was that meeting at the weekend? The UK wasn't allowed to that meeting. Anyway, France has now suggested that Britain should make itself less attractive, economically, should I say, to try and deter those people crossing the channel. What do you think to that? I'll see you just in a few minutes.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Pretty chilly out there today, but tomorrow temperatures will be quite a bit higher. However, it is going to be a fairly grey Tuesday and there'll be rain and drizzle in places as well. But it has turned milder across the northwest already thanks to this warm front tucked in here, some warmer air that is slowly spreading its way southwards. Before it arrives though, with clearer skies, we could see a touch of frost across the southeast until temperatures rise through the night as the cloud moves in, making for a misty, murky kind of night. And at times it'll be quite windy, particularly in the far northeast, although the wind's easing here a little as we head towards dawn. Temperatures, as I say, on the rise. So although close to freezing in some spots this evening, by morning we're up at 8, 9, 10 Celsius. So it's a much milder start, but it's a pretty grey day. Rain and drizzle on and off across Scotland throughout tomorrow and for much of Northern Ireland, northwest England. Some patchy rain at times across eastern England, but much of the south, I suspect, will be dry but fairly drab. Temperatures will be quite a bit higher than today's values. Still fairly chilly across Shetland, but elsewhere double figures, maybe 13 Celsius. But more wet weather will pep up through the afternoon and evening for Northern Ireland and then across Scotland. Quite a wet evening. A band of rain will swing across England and Wales. That could be quite lively for a time as well as the winds start to pick up once more. So turning blustery and also colder for Wednesday. We should see a return of some sunshine, but there will be showers across all areas, those showers turning wintry across northern Scotland, so some snow here, mostly over hills, but some to lower levels later in the day, and the winds picking up once more. Temperatures on Wednesday back down to single figures, and add on that wind, it will feel a lot colder. So things fluctuating quite a bit this week. Thursday looks like being a cold day, but with some sunshine before the potential for more wetter weather comes in during Friday and Saturday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans.
I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. Got to say, mixed reaction coming in about your thoughts about the government's response to this latest variant. Lots of you think that the government is not going far enough and that they should be doing more. Other people perhaps just think that we should adopt more of a wait-and-see approach. One of the things as well that I don't understand, never gets a look in, natural immunity. I mean, I've got the JCVI's list here of all the things we're going to do. We're going to booster jabs everyone over the age of 18, shorten the gaps between the jabs and the boosters, second jabs to kids. Why aren't we looking at people's natural immunity levels? I actually went just this morning, as it happens, for a blood draw to test my own antibody levels. I had to pay for that privately, and I guess I'm fortunate to be able to do so. But before we're recommending all these extra jabs and quicker jabs, why aren't we on the NHS offering people the opportunity to check what their antibody levels are? If you've got the answer to that, get in touch and let me know. Going to move on, though, to a different topic now. The war of words between France and the UK over the Channel migrants doesn't appear to be improving after the French have suggested that Britain should make itself less economically attractive to those wanting to come here. Their Interior Minister says the reason people are attempting to cross the sea from Calais is because of Britain's unregulated labour market, which often doesn't require people to use their identification. What do you think about this? I'll come to you first, Michael Heaver. Are we too economically attractive? Is this the reason that people are getting in those dinghies, do you think?
Well, I think the British government could be a lot more robust in what they're doing. One of the things that doesn't get discussed much, an element of this, is the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, when Theresa May was Home Secretary, she actually said that the UK should leave the ECHR, and she, of course, was a Remainer in terms of the 2016 referendum. I know there are now calls amongst Conservative MPs to scrap the Human Rights Act to really get on top of this, because quite frankly, I think
that sounds awful when you say it, though, doesn't it? We should scrap the Human Rights Act. When you say that, it does make me kind of go, ooh.
But the fact is that Home Secretary Priti Patel and the Home Office are getting tied up by the legal restrictions on what they can do, which is why only 5 illegal migrants who have come via this route this year have been deported. And, when you think about it, this has escalated now, not just over a number of months. This has gone on for years. 2020 saw a quadrupling on the number of people that came across via this route. We're now triple that for 2021. I think we're at about 27,000 people. And frankly, relying on the French and giving them money as a strategy has completely failed. By the way, I think the behaviour of Macron's French government, the level of hostility that we have seen, whether it's threats to cut energy supplies, whether it's blockades, despite the fact the UK has granted 96% of French fishing licences, the level of hostility that we're seeing from the French now, they've cancelled this meeting with Priti Patel, they've rejected...
No, they didn't cancel it. They had the meeting and just didn't allow Priti Patel to go to it.
Well, there you go. But, I mean, this is pathetic when this is a serious, dangerous issue. And they won't even have a meeting with Home Secretary Priti Patel. What does that say about their intentions? And now we get this today.
It probably says that they've had enough of people like Boris Johnson declaring, I think we've got his 5-point plan, by the way, coming up with 5-point plans, which is excellent, by the way. Please, more of that, Boris Johnson. We want to see more plans. We want to see, I'll show you, by the way, his 5-point plan, just in case you don't know what I'm talking about. Joint patrols to prevent migrant boats from leaving French beaches. Using more advanced technology, such as things like sensors and radars, etc., to detect boats leaving. Maritime patrols in each of the territorial waters. Ensuring that there's better intelligence, basically, sharing there to drive more arrests and prosecutions, and committing to immediate work to strike a bilateral returns agreement between Paris and London, as well as discussions on an UK-EU agreement. So that was the 5-point plan. Very sensible, very good. But who goes around tweeting their thoughts before they've even had the meeting?
Well, I think, to be fair, the British government have tried the softly, diplomatic, behind-the-scenes approach over a number of years now, and it's got absolutely nowhere. Don't forget, there have been a couple of reports now that even when the French authorities are on the beaches and they can see this going on, these illegal crossings, they're not even intervening. So frankly, relying on the French and giving them money, I mean, the latest, I think it was £54 million, has totally and utterly failed. As you say, I think the suggestions in that letter were serious suggestions. They were things that we could have cracked on with a deal between the UK and France. The French don't want to know. The real thing to consider here is that Macron's government, I'm afraid, who have made consistent digs at Brexit UK, whether that be about the vaccine strategy, whether it be threats to cut energy supplies, whether it be the row on fisheries. Macron and those around him are rattled by the fact that nearly everyone in France, by the way, is standing as a Eurosceptic candidate in the upcoming French presidential election, including, of course, Michel Barnier. And they are playing politics in the most disgraceful way. Why on earth can't they sit down with Priti Patel, have this meeting and put in place those points? Someone tell me why.
There's no doubt that Brexit hijinks politics is a big factor driving this. And, of course, there are those who voted to remain say, but if UK was still in the European Union, there'd be this thing called the Dublin regulation. But you look into the figures there, we were only able to, I think, send back 500 people who came across the channel via that illegal route. I think we need to have a much bigger debate, frankly, even at the European level, Michael. I think this is an issue to do with the UN Charter. It's the whole issue of how increasingly in a world with 7 billion people, 1 billion people actually live off less than $1 a day. It's subsistence income. We're not going to take the pull factor away from individuals and families who want to move vast distances, often with the help of criminal gangs, to try and get into not just the UK, but other rich countries. So this is something that we're going to have to deal with at an international level. We're going to have to look at what the definition is of an asylum seeker. And the thing that really concerns me about this whole debate, not something that I actually realised until I looked into it very recently, and also because I have friends who fled the Taliban back in the summer and are now holed up in refugee accommodation in Istanbul, is it's not possible to apply for asylum status unless you arrive here in Britain. So that is the pull. That is the biggest pull factor as to why we have people risking their lives and coming across the channel. So if we are genuinely about trying to play our part as one of several rich nations in the world, taking our fair share of refugees, then we've got to actually solve that asylum system and not just focus purely on what's going on across the Dover Straits.
And Julie, your thoughts?
I completely agree. I've been looking at issues of trafficking of women and girls into prostitution, for example, for decades. And what I see is desperation. And as you say, the criminal gangs, whether they're traffickers, whether they're smugglers, saying that we can help you cross, and then, of course, putting them in the most precarious of positions. And then you end up with people dead in the water and being described as economic migrants, when in fact what's happened to them is an entire trajectory of hell for them and their families. One thing that we could actually do on a national level is we could allow asylum seekers to work. Because all
we can after 6 months, yeah.
I mean, all of the asylum seekers that I've met in my work and in my life and in my neighbourhood, they actually want to work. They don't want to be coming over and taking food stamps and going to food banks and desperately scratching around for a living. There are so many women, for example, who are exploited into begging gangs on the underground, we've all seen. So if we allow people to work and recognise, as you've said, who is an asylum seeker? What's the definition of that? And then, of course, make sure that the general public has the correct information rather than hyperbole about scrounging people coming over just because they'll have a little bit of a better life and can buy themselves a bottle of claret before dinner. I mean, it's completely not that.
But, Julie, one of the things that I get asked, and I have to say, given the recent climate, we do tend to discuss this topic often, and I always get asked the same question all the time, every night that I do this, which is, if people are desperately fleeing persecution and they are indeed asylum seekers, etc., then why do so many people discard their paperwork? Why would you do that?
Well, exactly what we said earlier about the trafficking and smuggling gangs. Often it's not people discarding their paperwork. It's trafficking gangs taking the paperwork from them in order to have more of a hold over them financially and otherwise. But also, they're prohibitive, sorry, it's a word I can't pronounce, you know what I mean.
It's cold in here, don't worry.
Difficulties that many people have is knowing that until they arrive on our shores, that they will be turned away from a third country and that won't have a chance of even trying to seek asylum through legitimate means. And I've met with people who've been able to have 1 hour with a lawyer to prepare their immigration asylum case, when in fact you need several more hours than that to look through the circumstances of that person and their family and why they've had to flee. It's not as simple as sitting for an hour with a legal aid lawyer and then, of course, being rejected and then being sent to Yarlswood.
Yeah. But I would differ from Julie in this sort of sense of, we do clearly have tens of thousands of economic migrants that want to come here, that have come here, that do lose their paperwork, that do often also disappear without trace. And actually something I would agree with the French foreign minister about the attractiveness of still our very unregulated labour market. I mean, the whole debate about free movement was because we had a situation when we were in the European Union where 700 million people, EU nationals, who could just come here without any paperwork whatsoever, apply for a national insurance number and work anywhere. Now we've got the situation where we've got, frankly, not just criminal gangs on the other side of the channel, but also gang masters and people who are engaged in modern human slavery who are offering these people El Dorado, risk your life, cross the channel and then work in the illegal economy. And we don't have a labour market in this country, for example, that checks sufficiently enough people's right to work. There were just 11 prosecutions last year, according to the Home Office, of unscrupulous employers who were found to be employing illegal migrants. Why is that so low?
But the way to stop this dangerous situation is twofold. First of all, the government need to let it be known that anyone that comes illegally via this route, there's no point doing it. There's no point paying the criminal gangs because you ain't going to be allowed to stay. That message needs to go out loud and clear. The second thing the government need to do is stop playing so nice with the French. Instead of giving them money, let's start fining them for every boat they fail to stop coming across. If they don't want to pay those fines, we'll start revoking French fishing licences because don't forget, we've had threats and French blockades when we've already granted 96% of them. If they want to play silly buggers, if they don't want to get a serious handle on this, if they want to sit on the beaches and watch this go on and not intervene, then they can have zero access to our fishing waters. And let's see how that goes down. I think that is how you get things done on this.
There you go. Michael Heaver, why didn't they consult you in the first place, eh?
I don't know.
I've got to say, though, I do worry / wonder if it was that simple, surely they would have sorted it out by now. Do get in touch, can take a quick break, but do get in touch and let me know your thoughts on the topic so far. GBviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs. When we come back after the break, trigger warnings. What do you think to these? Are these necessary or are they a little bit much? Plus, what's your thoughts on talking about wealth and how much money you've got? The mum of Britain's largest family has been criticised online. I mean, we're all criticised online, aren't we? She's a mum to about 21 people, I think it is. 22. I was just about to say when I was saying 21, I felt like I was making it up, but I'm not making it up. She's a mum of 22. She's been criticised for sharing what people are saying her wealth online. What do you think to that? Do you talk about your finances online or not? I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, has the UK overreacted to Omicron? We'll look at the evidence and debate with Oxford expert Carl Hennigan in The Clash before getting positive Professor Carol Sikora's verdict. Then GB News star Neil Oliver advises how to deal with new restrictions without losing your mind. Plus, campaigner Liz Cole on the return of COVID paranoia in schools, and I'll break down the top headlines with my superstar panel. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back. Now, trigger warnings have been back in the news after the University of Aberdeen decided to flag up distressing themes in several novels to students. Academics have decided to warn anyone on campus reading things like Shakespeare's Julius Caesar that it features sexist attitudes. And I've got to say, I could go on. There's so many examples, but you get my gist, don't you, on this? Julie Bindel, your thoughts on all of these kind of trigger warnings?
It's absolutely ludicrous. I am actually my own trigger warning. I have that honour. I think I'm probably the only person in the UK where an email went out from a student society group to the Feminist Society with just trigger warning Julie Bindel. And it was just about some work that I produced on sexual violence, nothing to do...
Should I have put a trigger warning on tonight before you came on?
Very,
I wonder.
very, very possibly. I mean, I used to have, students telling me all the time about work that they wanted to access, from feminists mainly, where they had been warned this might be deeply distressing because it deals with rape. Well, yeah, of course it does, because that's the kind of campaigning that feminists do. And so we need to look at not just the students, who clearly are treating universities like a business now because of student fees and because it's a very privileged site now, university, because of how expensive it is. But we need to actually look at the academics that not only kind of condone this, but in many ways they're promoting it. Sometimes they're apologising to students, and I've heard this from across the red brick universities, for having imposed upon them something to do with, for example, British colonialism. Well, how are we supposed to teach students history and the relevance of issues in the present and help them become critical thinkers if we're protecting them from things that happen in real life all the time?
But then what would you say to someone that says, hang on a second, like you just mentioned, say, rape, for example. What would you say to someone who has been raped, who does get upset by that, and then it just randomly comes across it when they're not expecting to?
Well, you know, you can see that on easy access, push one button hardcore pornography on MTV, and often in the street where you hear, you know, the most offensive things being said to women by men, in groups, in bars, in clubs. What do we do to women who've been sexually assaulted, which is rather a large number of women? Tell them to stay at home and be cushioned forever from any mention of this atrocity. And also, what do we do when we want to actually look at racism critically, when we want to examine the past and present, when we want to look at the British Empire? Any issue that you choose, somebody is going to be offended by it. And we do not have the right not to be offended, and we have to teach students to be critical thinkers, or we are done for.
But Michael, can't you teach someone to be a critical thinker while simultaneously being mindful of their feelings?
But I mean...
I made myself laugh when I say that sentence. I'm trying to take it seriously.
I feel like we as a society, it's becoming more and more wimpish, really. I mean, I even remember seeing there was a sort of warning on the Aladdin movie about, you know, please, if you watch this movie, please be careful because it's got some outdated views and stuff like this. I mean, where does this stop exactly? And I think universities specifically, we know in this country there are huge challenges when it comes to freedom of speech, you know. A mob of 30 mouthy students just going and shutting down an event and the academics caving in virtually every single time is disgraceful. I also think more widely on the university point, the amount now they seem to be focused on chasing foreign student money because foreign students can pay higher fees than British students is something else to consider. But look, I just think in a wider point in terms of society, we have got to stop mollycoddling young people. They are going to, in their lives, in their working lives, experience views, opinions, things they don't like, their boss speaking to them perhaps in a way they're not entirely comfortable with. And guess what? You've got to get on and work and put food on the table. That's what you should be doing.
I think that's what Michael is saying. Deal with it, Tom.
Well, to be quite frank with you, I was triggered just when I saw this story earlier sent by your producer, and I'll be heading straight out for the GB News safe space area after the show.
I'll meet you there.
Whenever you see these stories now, you do have to do a double take, don't you? It's just, is it April Fool's Day or not? And I think this just demonstrates, does it not, that when we've kind of reached a period in our history where it seems it's constant censorship of language, offence archaeology it's known as, and also self-censorship, people not using certain words, even though they're perfectly legal words to use, and they're not haven't been historically offensive. And in any case, I thought the whole purpose, if you opt to go to university, surely you're opting to go there to be challenged, to engage in critical analysis. And I mean, on your point, Michelle, obviously about things if people have gone through particular traumas, well, we've always had advisory warnings. Of course, it's down to the lecturer in the course notes to point out perhaps that this is going to be. But when you're getting into the point here, which is that the word trigger is having to be changed because that in itself is offensive. We saw it recently with snowflake as well. Somebody arguing that you can't use the word snowflake because that offends young people. I mean, where do we go? I mean, we don't have a language after a while, do we?
Well, Mike's got in touch on the email saying trigger warnings. All of this madness is making youths naive. They've got a big shock coming when they enter into the real world. And he ends by saying, stop wrapping people up in cotton wool. There you go, Mike. I think I've got to say most people on this panel would agree with you, but going to move on, trying to squeeze one more story in before we say goodbye to you tonight. The mum of Britain's biggest family with a whopping 22. I thought I was making that up earlier, but I'm not. 22 kids. She's been forced to defend herself online after trolls have accused her of flaunting her wealth. Sue Radford was criticised by some of her followers when she posted a picture of, get this, an £850 mattress that she's bought for her kids' bedroom. One commentator said it was a disgusting waste of money and that she should give back instead of flaunting her cash. And Sue responded saying her family had worked extremely hard to get to where they are. I've got to say, first and foremost, people troll everyone on social media. That's what people do, often anonymously, I might add. But where do you sit with this, Julie? Is this just envy? What is it?
Where's the wealth? Sorry, anyone with 22 kids, unless you're Rupert Murdoch, is not going to be wealthy.
£850 on a mattress is quite steep. I don't think I'd spend that.
Seriously, though, where is the wealth? I mean, people spend outrageous amounts of money, more than that, for a meal for two. Where is the trolling of really wealthy bankers and oligarchs? We're choosing to troll instead a mother of 22. I mean, obviously, I have views about why you would want 22 children. But that is not wealth. It strikes me that it's pure sexism. They're having a go at a woman because she said she'd bought a mattress for her kids.
See, I've not bought a mattress for ages, and I don't really want to make it about mattress gate, but I'm just wondering, is £850 a lot for a mattress? It feels like it to me, but maybe that's because I'm not in the business of mattress buying, I don't know. But anyway, on a more broader point, Michael, I don't really like kind of talking about what things cost online. I find it a bit,
I know what you mean. Look, one of the best decisions I made recently, about the last 6 months or so, is to spend far less time on social media. And do you know what? I'm far happier. I go out, I exercise more, I go to the gym more, I speak to my mates, exactly. And, I think this thing we've got in society now of adults sort of having a go at people, spending their times in the evenings after work or whatever, laying into people, whether it be in the sports field, whether it be people, I think it's a bit strange posting things like this online, but if people want to do it, let them do it. The thing I find weird now is the amount of people, and we call them trolls, of course, that just basically go around in a hive of negativity, slagging off strangers online who they've never met, who they would never speak to in such a way face to face. And I just think the whole phenomenon is rather quite strange and sad.
Tom Buick.
I'm on the live and let be side of the argument. I mean, somebody tweeted earlier on my timeline that they were enjoying a wonderful bacon panini. If that's the kind of level of banality they want to engage in on social media, that's up to them. But we are in the business of buying a mattress.
Social media is an odd, peculiar thing, though, isn't it? Because I remember when I was growing up, say, like, for example, you went on holiday, I remember you'd do everything possible to make people not know you'd gone on holiday. You'd try and mess around with your milk bottles outside. You'd have a timer.
That's true.
You'd have a timer putting your lights on. You'd try and make sure that your neighbours were shoving your purse. You literally used to do everything to make out you weren't on holiday. And now people can't resist, can they? They go on these holidays and they're kind of posting about it everywhere. And I think to myself, don't you worry about getting burgled? That's what I think.
What, for a mattress?
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's
I
the
don't know.
flat screen TV that costs £800 you've got to worry about.
But I just find the kind of the oversharing, if you like, on social media. I know that's not what this topic is about, and I've digressed, but why not? If you can't digress on your own show, when can you digress? That's what I say. Sue has said, regarding triggers in books, give me strength. I have to wonder how I've reached the ripe old age of 74 and not being traumatised by life's effect on me. There you go, Sue. Well, anyway, that is pretty much all we've got time for tonight. Thank you very much for your company. Michael, Julie, Tom, thank you for yours as well. Do get in touch as well if there's ever anything that you think we should be debating on this programme. Get in touch with me. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs if there's anything you want us to be talking about. But for now, that is the end of tonight's show. I'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. I will see you then. Have yourselves a very good evening in the meantime.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Pretty chilly out there today, but tomorrow temperatures will be quite a bit higher. However, it is going to be a fairly grey Tuesday and there'll be rain and drizzle in places as well. But it has turned milder across the northwest already thanks to this warm front tucked in here, some warmer air that is slowly spreading its way southwards. Before it arrives though, with clearer skies, we could see a touch of frost across the southeast until temperatures rise through the night as the cloud moves in, making for a misty, murky kind of night. And at times it'll be quite windy, particularly in the far northeast, although the wind's easing here a little as we head towards dawn. Temperatures, as I say, on the rise. So although close to freezing in some spots this evening, by morning we're up at 8, 9, 10 Celsius. So it's a much milder start, but it's a pretty grey day. Rain and drizzle on and off across Scotland throughout tomorrow and for much of Northern Ireland, northwest England. Some patchy rain at times across eastern England, but much of the south, I suspect, will be dry but fairly drab. Temperatures will be quite a bit higher than today's values. Still fairly chilly across Shetland, but elsewhere double figures, maybe 13 Celsius. But more wet weather will pep up through the afternoon and evening for Northern Ireland and then across Scotland. Quite a wet evening. A band of rain will swing across England and Wales. That could be quite lively for a time as well as the winds start to pick up once more. So turning blustery and also colder for Wednesday. We should see a return of some sunshine, but there will be showers across all areas, those showers turning wintry across northern Scotland, so some snow here, mostly over hills, but some to lower levels later in the day, and the winds picking up once more. Temperatures on Wednesday back down to single figures, and add on that wind, it will feel a lot colder. So things fluctuating quite a bit this week. Thursday looks like being a cold day, but with some sunshine before the potential for more wetter weather comes in during Friday and Saturday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want